In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And today we're tackling a topic that gets people emotionally invested real quick. And we're not just talking what's cool, not just what YouTube commandos like. We're actually going to try to make sense when you strip things down to reality.
Yeah, this isn't a gun flex episode. We're not going to rank the best Instagram builds, and we're not going to argue over whose suppressor costs more than a used car, but we are going to talk about guns. This is another obligatory gun episode, and specifically long guns. We're going to talk about rifles today. And I don't think that we do a ton of gun stuff, and I like that about us, but maybe, yeah, once every 20, like if we're kind of, I think that's kind of our average. This is number 4. We're almost to episode 80. So yeah, 5% of the time we like to chat about guns. That's not crazy, right?
Yeah, we don't really go super deep into it like a lot of other podcasts do. And, we try to keep things grounded and actually realistic and practical and tactical. It's kind of in our
Sure.
logo. So
Right.
that's where all this is coming from. But this is an episode about rifles as tools, and tools you might rely on for security or hunting or deterrence or just staying alive when society's rules change. Because we're talking about guns, I definitely want to say this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Let's get that one out of the way right at the beginning and move forward from there.
Yeah, that's good. We did get hate from the one guy who didn't like that we did any kind of safety briefing at all, which I just thought was, yeah, and it was specifically on the gun episode. We're like, okay, let's talk about gun safety. No, you can't do that. That's your podcast is just focused on safety all the time, and I need to find a new one, which I just thought was crazy because I don't know, like when you go to the range, that's what you do. You do the safety brief with, the range officer. That's what firearms is about being safe. So I don't know why anybody would be against that.
Some people's kids.
You can't make everybody happy. But yeah, we're not saying that you need all of these rifles or anything like that. We're going to talk about different platforms and calibers and kind of talk about the mechanics of how rifles operate and which ones may be better for you and those kinds of things. So I think this will be fun. I think that this will be good for the amateurs who maybe just want to know a little bit more. Maybe they're going to buy your first long gun and you want a little more advice from someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, or maybe you are a professional and you're just going to commiserate with us about all these things you already know. But I think this will be a pretty fun one.
I think so too. And today we're going to break down this whole topic into some very specific lenses. So caliber, stopping power, versatility, maintenance, ammo availability, durability, modularity, and then platform commonality.
Yeah, and I love that last one. I like commonality across all my platforms.
I know you do.
You know I do, man. I've got so many DeWalt batteries. It's crazy. But yeah, we'll talk about the ARs or the Armalite rifle, and we'll talk about the AKs or the Automatic Kalashnikov. And then I'm getting good, man. I was actually just in some Eastern European kind of former Soviet bloc countries, so my accent's getting pretty good there.
Automatic Kalashnikov. I like it.
And we'll talk about bolt guns, so bolt operated rifles, right? And then the 22s that kind of they deserve their own place in this conversation, I think. And then we'll talk about some pistol caliber carbines, and a lot of those are very close to me. Some of you know this. And then we'll kind of wrap this one up with our top three. We do this every gun episode where we talk about like, hey, so what's your top three in this category? And we did a long range shooting episode before, Chris, and this isn't that,
Hmm.
right? We're gonna touch on that kind of stuff. We're specifically going to talk about the the hardware here, the machinery.
Yep. And before we even talk rifles, let's get something straight. The best rifle depends on what problem you're trying to solve. This is not a end all be all for rifles. Each one
Yeah,
has a specific task.
that's right. There's every rifle has a task. Every specific tool has a specific task, and I don't like to get into those conversations about what's the best because there really isn't one. And I think a lot of people will tell you, no, man, if I had a Ma Deuce, then that's all I ever need. But nah, there really isn't a perfect rifle for every single task. So I
I'm
think,
surprised that you said that because I figured you'd say 30 carbine all the way.
well, okay, remember when we say 30 carbine, and I'm going to, we can talk about this later because 30 carbine is a round, not a rifle, right? But generally people stick to the M1 carbine as a rifle, and it is a very capable rifle, but it's not 1,000-yard rifle, and I'm willing to admit that. But the round itself, I think that it has a place in this conversation, but it obviously is not the perfect rifle. And I think that really depends on, are you defending a fixed location? Are you moving with a group? Are you hunting? Are you trying to avoid contact altogether? Do you only have one rifle left in the entire world forever? And if so, that rifle is going to look a lot different than if you have a bunch of spare parts forever and ever, right?
Yeah, and most people don't plan for just one use for their rifle. They kind of want something that can do a little bit of everything, kind of that jack of all trades, master of none. And that's really where the trade-offs start. So people will kind of build everything up in their head before they even start to look at their budget for getting a rifle, and they're already compromising in certain ways that they may not even realize.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. So as we talk through platforms, keep this in mind. There is no perfect rifle. There are only rifles that are less wrong for certain scenarios.
I agree. And let's take a look at caliber first because caliber is where most people start to lose their minds.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that really will they will absolutely die on the hill of one particular caliber, right? They'll say, yeah, stopping power is, that's all that matters. It's got more stopping power. And I think that is just one of the most abused phrases in the entire gun world. Stopping
Oh,
power.
110%. Because rifles, they don't stop threats through some magic knockdown power. It's not, I cast fireball and all of a sudden everybody's dead. They stop threats primarily through penetration and disruption. So shot placement beats caliber every time, period.
Yeah, that's true. And that said, caliber still does matter, obviously, not because of internet arguments, but because of there's all kinds of other things that go into caliber. There's the availability of said caliber, and there's recoil management. And I think people don't think about that a lot. That if you have this awesome flat shooting 1,000-yard round, but you can't make a follow up shot because of the recoil on your body, then that isn't actually the right caliber for you. And then you have terminal performance on realistic targets and you have ballistics. So there's all kinds of things that go into this.
Yeah, and there's a reason that 5.56 NATO, 7.62 by 39, 308, 22 LR, these calibers show up again and again and again in the conversation for a very good reason.
Right. They're everywhere. They are widely produced, they're widely understood, and they're already embedded into the civilian world and obviously the military supply chains, with the exception of probably 22 long rifle. I don't know if that's got a place in the military world or not, does it?
It used to as a trainer, and now they have moved primarily to 9 millimeter tracer rounds for trainers on like the AT4 84 millimeter anti-tank rocket launcher. It's a
Oh,
nine
okay.
millimeter tracer round instead of a 22, but they used to have a very important place as a training rifle. I actually have two Russian TOZs that were, one of them was an SKS trainer and the other was a Mosin Nagant trainer for the Russian military. And
Really?
yeah, they used 22 LR because it was that widely available even in Russia during World War II. But let's start with the AR platform because love it or hate it, it's hard to ignore, right?
Yeah, that's true. It really is. There's a reason it is the most popular rifle in the entire North American continent. And I I like to go into the history a little bit. I think the AR is kind of cool because it doesn't stand for assault rifle; it stands for Armalite rifle. But
Yes, it
but
does.
there's some cool stuff. Did you know? So the Armalite Corporation, Eugene Stoner, who invented the AR, he started at Fairchild Aircraft, and so Fairchild Aircraft actually Armalite became a subsidiary of Fairchild. And if you ever want to look at like what are the coolest products that have ever existed ever, they were all made by Fairchild Aircraft. I'm not kidding. Like the A10 Warthog, Fairchild. The
Okay.
the the Armalite rifle, the M16, that was a Fairchild Aircraft product. What's his name? Eugene Stoner was working for Fairchild, and then they spun that off. And then I think his first rifle was called like the AR-1, and it was a bolt gun. And right. It's a pretty cool rifle. I've never seen one in person, but I've seen some videos, and that was actually a very cool rifle. But yeah, Fairchild Aircraft, man. Did you see Flight of the Phoenix?
With Dennis Quaid
Yeah,
and
Giovanni
Giovanni
Ribisi.
Ribisi.
Yeah, so that was actually a remake. I think that was 2004. That was a remake, and that airplane was a Fairchild C-119 flying boxcar. But the original, I think from the 60s, was also a Fairchild. It was a C-82 Packet, which is a stupid name for an airplane, but it was a big like that twin nacelle boom, cargo aircraft. But anyway, so Fairchild made everything very, very cool, including the AR-15. And that is, the 5.56. It ticks a ton of boxes. It's lightweight. It's controllable. It's very easy to shoot. It's very easy to get follow-on shots with. So there's a reason it's just the most popular rifle ever.
Well, yes, and incredibly customizable, but stopping power is very adequate, especially with modern ammunition. You'll hear going into history, Operation Gothic Serpent, October 3rd, 1993. That was when the Rangers and Delta went into Mogadishu and we had the Black Hawk Down incident. Some of the Delta and Rangers and everyone on the ground was saying that some of the Delta snipers were uh, they were a little bit jealous of them because they had kept their modified M14 rifles and the 308 was knocking people down and keeping them down, whereas 5.56 was going right through people. Well, that's also because they were high on an amphetamine called cot. And
Yeah.
they were dead. They just hadn't stopped moving yet. A lot of the Somali fighters, they had lethal shots, heart blown into pieces, and just didn't care. So, shot placement over caliber all the time.
That's kind of a similar story, and I don't know if this is just one of those urban mythy things or not, but isn't that kind of a common story with the uh 45 ACP that they were fighting uh, natives and they were using like bamboo armor and they needed a larger caliber down in Latin America to stop people that were all chewing up coca leaves and they weren't getting stopped by like 38 long Colt. And so they needed a bigger, better round. I think
A,
it's a similar piece of history, isn't it?
a big part of that was actually the brush and foliage knocking around 9 millimeter and 38. So
Oh,
the 45 snaps through branches versus 9 mil kind of bounces and gets deflected
right.
in nine different
In a
directions
in a
before it
jungle
gets to the
area.
target. Yep.
Yeah. So Now, the real strength of the AR is versatility and modularity. These things are so incredibly modular. You can buy 1,000 of every kind of part on that rifle and every color and every "Don't tread on me" logo and all kinds of stuff. You can do anything to that rifle. It's incredibly modular and they are very versatile.
Yes, I built my competition AR, barrels, uppers, optics, triggers, stocks. You can tailor it to your environment and your body type more than almost anything else in your kit. And you're absolutely right that you can buy different colored springs for your extractor and ejector spring that you're never going to see. But hey, it's purple. It's cool, right?
Right. And maintenance is pretty straightforward. I mean, parts are everywhere. And by I mean everywhere, they're not only just available, that gun is just riddled with springs and pins and all kinds of stuff. I mean, parts are literally everywhere. So if something breaks, odds are somebody nearby has a replacement. I stock a couple of like AR lower rebuild kits, very inexpensive, and it's just a bag of springs and pins. So I know that I can maintain that rifle if one of those bajillion springs or pins happens to break.
Yep. If I had the lowers just on standby, I think I have enough to build 3 more complete rifles.
Right.
Just and I'll change out a part, upgrade it, keep the old part because it's still good, and I've
Of
got
course.
so many of them. Um, but yeah, another advantage of the AR is ammo availability is huge here in the US. 5.56 NATO slash 223 Remington. They are slightly different, so make sure that you have a barrel that's capable of firing 5.56. Otherwise, you can tear it up pretty quick.
Yeah, isn't that if it's a wild barrel, doesn't that mean it can shoot both? Is that right?
Correct, correct. A 223 Wild, WYLDE. Some people call it a wildy, but it's 223 Wild is the tighter tolerances of the 223 Remington barrel, but it can handle the pressure of the 5.56 NATO. So you actually end up with a more accurate and longer lasting barrel uh, versus a standard 5.56.
Got it. Okay. But the downsides, obviously, it is more maintenance sensitive than some other rifle platforms. It does need to be cleaned, it does need to be lubricated, it does need to be taken care of.
Yes, and politically speaking, I know we don't go into politics a whole lot, but this is also the most likely platform to be restricted, which matters in your long-term planning. So keep that in mind if you're getting into the gun game.
Right. Or if you're moving to California or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to discuss is the only weird thing about this rifle really is that there's this fundamental difference between the two types of operation. And basically, this is the way the gun cycles. And this really matters when making this semi-auto operation. And there's a couple of different reasons for this, right, Chris? But do you want to talk about that? This is the biggest thing for me is that there's two different ways these operate. There's kind of the cheaper way, the more expensive way, and some people say the better way. Do you want to break that down real quick? Because I think that's the key if you're going to build one of these is picking which of those systems first, right?
Yes, and let's kind of break this down. What you're talking about is direct impingement versus piston-driven systems.
Right.
Quick science lesson, a direct impingement system, that's the original Eugene Stoner design for the AR-15 platform. It is the most common. And how it works is a portion of the gas from that fired cartridge is tapped back into the system through a tiny little porthole on the barrel, and it goes up through a gas block and then travels backwards through a hollow tube, funnily enough called the gas tube, which then on top of the bolt carrier group, there's something called a gas key. And all that key does is direct the gas down into the bolt. And laws of inertia, that much gas coming back and suddenly stopping forces the bolt backwards. That hot gas is vented into an expansion chamber inside of the carrier, and that acts as kind of a small internal piston, which causes the bolt to unlock and cycle the action. The pros of this are that it's lighter weight because there are fewer moving parts and the gas tube is hollow compared to a piston-driven operating rod. It has a smoother, softer recoil impulse because gas pressure applies force linearly, so it's gentler on the carrier. And then it has greater accuracy potential because there's no external operating rod attached to the barrel to interfere with barrel harmonics or vibration during firing, right? It's also more affordable and it has a vast aftermarket for parts and customization because of the widespread adoption and mil spec standards. On my competition AR, the gas tube is actually a full rifle length gas tube and it's titanium instead of stainless steel. The cons, it runs hotter and dirtier because you've got this super hot carbon filled gas. It gets vented directly into the receiver and the bolt carrier group. So it requires more frequent cleaning and lubrication for reliable function. And especially if you're going to be in a competition or adverse conditions, high volume of firing, it's going to dirty up quick. And if you've ever cleaned your gun and gotten black thumbs, you can kind of wipe it along your cheekbones and you've got homemade uh, shine stop.
Ooh, nice. And homemade lead poisoning.
Exactly. See,
Yeah.
2 for 1.
And so that's direct impingement, right?
Right.
And the other way?
The other way is the gas piston system. And a gas piston, it's often a short stroke design in AR-15s, but long stroke does exist. That's the alternative that's common for other reliable rifle designs like the AK-47. It works similarly to the direct impingement system, but instead of gas moving all the way back to the bolt carrier group, when it goes up into the block, it pushes against a separate solid piston that's in a cylinder in that gas block. And that pushes the entire bolt carrier back, as well as the operating rod and that piston head. And so when it pushes back, it cycles the action mechanically, and the vent gas is all blown out through. It's still called a gas tube, but it's a much wider tolerance and there's no pressure in it. So it just vents out of the front of the gas tube away from the shooter. The pros there, it runs cleaner and cooler because all of that hot gas is contained and vented at the gas block instead of in the receiver. And it is slightly more reliable in adverse conditions: dirt, mud, blood, extreme heat, extreme cold. It requires less frequent maintenance than a direct impingement gun. This is where we start to get into the debate: AR versus AK, which one will last forever, right? Um, it is better for suppressed shooting because there's less gas blowback into the shooter's face. That a lot of systems, um, when you fire an AR with a suppressor on it, you get a lot more felt recoil because of that blowback.
Sure.
But with a gas piston system, all of that stays up front, so you actually don't get all of that coming back. The cons of a gas piston: it has increased weight, particularly towards the front of the rifle because of that added mass on the piston and the op rod. There is more felt recoil because of the added mass and the moving parts. You do get a sharper and more abrupt operating impulse. If you talk to AK guys, they might call this pap slap. For the Yugoslavian PAP and M72s and things like that, they jump out of your shoulder when you fire them and kind of slap you in the cheek. Um, they do have a higher cost and they do often use proprietary parts. So it limits your aftermarket compatibility and market replacement. And parts can be harder to find. You have to know what you're looking for, especially since not all parts are unanimously transferable across all platforms.
So, if you're starting a build from scratch, uh, or you want to buy one new, I think it's important distinction to make. I have my own kind of end of the world prepper reasons for having a gas piston version, at least one of these, as in my giant collection of ARs. And besides all the cool stuff that Chris just talked about a minute ago, the one is that they are better for handling lead ammo. If you're gonna find yourself in the end times where maybe you're pouring your own bullets, a gas piston is better for lead. Obviously, it's not great. You don't want to shoot it. You don't want to shoot just lead all the time, but it because of that, I think the reason really is because of that wider tube you were talking about, Chris, is that the lead is less likely to gunk up in there and stop the rifle from cycling. Is that why?
That's a big part of it. Is because it has a bigger space to kind of go up into,
Yep.
so it doesn't stick to the piston head like it would to the inside of a DI gas tube.
Sure. And so it's easier cleaning too, right? Cleaning the lead deposits off of that solid piston and cylinder is significantly easier, I think, than trying to scrub them out of that long, thin, direct impingement gas tube. But anyway, that's just my reason for having at least one of these is kind of the that's a good end of the world scenario reason for that. So let's pivot. Let's talk about the AK-47 platform. So now, what do you want to say about the AK side of the house?
Well, to start out, that reputation for durability isn't just hype. They run dirty, wet, cold, abused. They will perform and continue to go and go and go.
Yeah, this is Mikhail Kalishnikov's baby, and it's awesome. That 7.62 by 39 offers solid penetration, good intermediate range effectiveness, especially through like the lighter barrels. And there's a great book. It's called AK-47. I think it's The Weapon That Changed the Face of War is what it's called. And it's just a great book, but there's a very cool scene they talk about where Eugene Stoner and Mikhail Kalishnikov meet each other. And Eugene Stoner goes on and on and on about, what do you like about the AK? What don't you like? And he has this big diatribe. And then they ask Kalishnikov, what do you think about the M16 or the Stoner or whatever it was? And he just goes, it's good. And that was it. Like, man, a few words. But anyway, yeah, it's a completely different world. It's got more recoil because it's a heavier bullet. And where the AK shines is that it's just rugged simplicity, right? Fewer small parts, looser tolerances, and it's less sensitive to its maintenance needs.
Yeah, and there are some downsides. Accuracy is generally going to be a little bit worse than when working with a quality AR, especially when you get past 300 yards. The 7.62 round is just so much heavier and ballistically inefficient. It starts to tumble a little bit quicker, so it doesn't have the same kind of long range accuracy. And the ergonomics, they're not quite as friendly. There aren't as many options, especially for optics mounting, unless you really modernize the platform and bring it up to modern standards with a Picatinny rail. And you've got your laser and your grenade launcher and your flamethrower and your underbarrel
Sure.
shotgun and 19 different sub weapons hanging off the front of it. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, that's not really gonna happen, yeah, with the AK, but you are gonna have nice wood furniture, and it's gonna feel all nice and warm and look pretty, like it belongs in a cabin in the mountains or something.
Unless you're looking at mine, which is an underfolder, so it's just this hunk of metal that sticks into your shoulder. It's ugly as sin, but it works.
Right,
It still
right.
works.
So that's kind of the 2 big ones, right? The AR and the AK, but let's talk about bolt action rifles, right? There's all kinds of different calibers, and we're not gonna go into it, but, um, I don't think bolt guns get enough respect in the SHTF conversation. What do you think?
I agree because everyone wants volume of fire. They don't think about the precision, reliability, and power that a bolt gun can give you. And by bolt gun, that's kind of shorthand for a bolt action rifle. Um, so hundreds of different models and variants, but primarily you are looking at a squeeze of the trigger. You unlock the bolt and manually return it to the rear, manually push it forward and relock the bolt, and you're ready to fire again. Sniper rifles are oftentimes bolt action rifles. The M24 and the M40 in the US arsenal, those are bolt actions. And you really do get a lot of precision, reliability, and power out of some of these rounds and these rifles. And we're talking 1,000 yards plus easy.
Right, and they're better for handling suppressors too, right? Because 100% of the gas goes forward, and that gas is where the noise finds itself. So 100% of the noise goes forward. So they do handle a suppressor really well and a lot better. But there's some solid calibers, and obviously, you can get. I have a bolt gun in both the standard AR 223 caliber and the AK-47 7.62 by 39 caliber. So there still is that commonality. If you're trying to just stock less ammo, there is a reason to have a bolt action rifle in those same calibers.
I completely agree. And things like 308 or 30-06, those are going to take down most animals in North America. They're phenomenal for hunting, long range deterrence, barrier penetration. You can get some pretty wildcat rounds that'll do some serious things to brick walls. But the maintenance is pretty minimal. There's just not a whole lot to break on a bolt gun.
Right. Obvious downside, slower rate of fire, and generally speaking, lower magazine capacity. Although there are bolt action rifles that do take standard off the shelf magazines. Like you can get uh, bolt action rifles that handle a standard AR-15 magazine, which is pretty cool. Again, you're talking about commonalities across your preps.
Yeah, I think the Ruger American series and the Mossberg MVP series, those will both take standard
Standard.
AR pattern
Yep.
magazines.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So
And
there's a lot of options there.
really, in a resource constrained environment like a true SHTF without rule of law world would be, accuracy and ammo efficiency are going to matter more than that volume of fire. If
Yeah.
you come up on somebody and if they're giving a mad minute of fire, just constant suppressive fire for a full minute, by the time you survive that, they're out of ammo or their
Yeah.
barrels are overheated. So,
Right. Yeah, that's right. And so a bolt gun paired with a semi-auto can be a perfect, powerful combo for a group. And again, if you can find a round that you kind of like for everything, and you can stock less different rounds, then you can have the exact same round in both a bolt action rifle and a semi-automatic rifle.
yeah. And speaking of round availability, if you don't have a 22 caliber rifle in your preps, you're missing something critical.
100%, dude. 22 long rifle is not it's not a primary fighting rifle. Uh let's get that out of the way, right? But it's good for so much stuff. I probably shoot a 22 LR more than every other gun I have put together, at least in practice, because it is the gun for like pest control. That's kind of what I find myself doing all the time, whether it's stuff getting into the chicken coops or it's skunks burrowing under a building or something. Dude, I use a 22 for everything. It is so incredibly versatile for all that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Small game, pest control, training, quiet operations. It's unmatched in any of those.
And the ammo, super duper cheap and very lightweight. I don't know if there is a less expensive ammo. There's not, right? You're paying like 3 cents a round still, even in today's inflated prices. There just
I
isn't.
I think maybe ball bearings, if you're using a slingshot, might be
Yeah,
cheaper.
maybe cheaper, but if you buy in quantity and you don't get the perfectly round ones.
Yeah, I mean, and in most cases, maintenance is simple. The recoil is absolutely non-existent. Anyone can really learn to shoot on a 22 platform.
Totally. And, in a prolonged, let's call it a hardship, in a prolonged SDH environment, the ability to quietly acquire food without burning center fire ammo and bringing attention to yourself with all that report, I think that's pretty important.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in the woods and I couldn't tell if it was a 22 cracking off or it was a tree branch cracking.
Sure.
So it really, really can be quiet. Let's move on to kind of an interesting middle ground here. And I know you're gonna go wild over this one, AC. Pistol caliber carbines.
100%. I have a lot to say about that. But yeah, shared ammo and magazine with sidearms absolutely simplifies logistics, and in an SHTF scenario that simplifies your life. So I have an AR-15 style rifle that is in 9 millimeter, and it takes standard Glock 17 magazines. And so if you not only wanted to stock just one caliber, but also just one magazine, you could do that with 9 millimeter. And I don't think there's a lot of other rounds you could say that about. Maybe 45 ACP, but it's just a very simple way to consolidate and have this common operating platform. And obviously, the downside is they don't really go very far. But besides that, yeah, you could certainly stock way less rounds if you wanted to focus on one of these pistol caliber carbines. And again, this is where I go to your 30 carbine. Is a lot of people only think about the M1 carbine, but uh, I have I think it's a Ruger Model 92, no, Marlin. It's a Marlin lever action, that is chambered in 30 carbine. It's a
Okay.
good lever action with a magazine rifle, and then obviously you can get any number of wheel guns in a 30 carbine. That you could get a very good Ruger Blackhawk chambered in 30 carbine, and now you could obviously have both a rifle and a pistol that fire the exact same round, and now you're using less overall ammo. You're stocking less different calibers, but there are some downsides, right?
Yeah, and I mean, downsides, it does have limited range. It doesn't necessarily go through barriers the same. But for indoor or urban defense, they're very controllable platforms, and you can get them in 9 millimeter, 45, 40 Smith and Wesson. I have seen a couple in 38 special. Those ones are kind of wild, but there's all kinds of different things that you can do with a pistol caliber carbine, especially if you have it as what's called a truck gun or your get home gun, because some of them you can fold the stock and have a very compact platform until you need it, comes out of the back seat and you're ready to go. And you've got a 16-inch barrel on a carbine as opposed to just a pistol.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and with those pistol caliber carbines, I think ammo availability and commonality are the two biggest pros for those. Obviously, we talked about some cons, but those are the two biggest one. Um, but yeah, I think that might be the most overlooked factor for a lot of preppers who just want to stock up on 223 and 308.
Yeah, you can ask Burt Gummer. The best rifle in the world is useless without ammo,
Yeah,
and
that's
and he'll tell
exactly
you to
right.
get out of his basement.
Right, yeah. Oh, actually, there was a MacGyver episode where it was a break open shotgun, and he had broken it open, and then I think for some reason he was like trying to crawl through like a electrified fence, and so he made this little like tunnel out of the break open shotgun. It was pretty cool. I'd like to find that one, but he did find a use for a completely empty rifle.
So it's possible, and
It's maybe
obviously
there's a couple of things you could do.
you can duct tape your kitchen knife onto the end of it and use it as a bayonet. But
Brad Pitt did that in World War Z.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there are things that you can do with it, but in general, the best rifle in the world is just going to be useless without ammo. And when we're talking about calibers, I mean, 5.56, 7.62 by 39, 308, 22 LR, 9 mil are going to just dominate this category as far as availability.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Those if I guess if there was, yeah, 5 or 6 rounds and those were the only ones I was going to stock, that would probably be it. Um, but yeah, you do want to talk about, durability and maintenance here. So you do want platforms that can tolerate the dirt and neglect and inconsistent ammo too. That's a big one. Is there are some very, very picky rifles out there when we start talking about semi-automatics, and then there are some rifles that are not picky at all.
Yes. Some of mine, they will only run high end CCI or
Sure.
I've got one that'll run everything Blazer to CCI, Arms Core traditionally runs very, very dirty and it has no problems chewing through it. But, um, when you talk about durability and maintenance, make sure that you're using the right ammo as much as you can. Find something that your gun likes to eat and then feed it a steady diet, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also found with the 223s, there's around specifically the 223 heavy. You can get 223 in, I think it's 75 grain or 77 grain, and depending on the inside of that lands, the inside of that barrel, your AR-15 may or may not eat those, but your bolt gun might love it. And so that's one of those things where you can have kind of two different rounds. You can have that lightweight round you feed through your AR, and you can have that heavier, longer range, more stable bullet you feed through your bolt gun. But if they can interoperate and it's just they're 90% as good when they do, that could be a very viable option.
Yeah, and I have a bolt gun that loves 180 grain, and it hates anything below that. But when I try to run 180 in my M1A, it doesn't like it. They're too long. It doesn't want to go
Sure.
in battery. So
Yep.
I keep two different caliber or two different weights of the same caliber on hand.
Right. And in that kind of situation, then sure, it doesn't really make any more sense than just getting two different rounds. You're essentially stocking two different calibers at that point, right?
Right. And I could
Yeah.
force them to fit. It just slows down my rate of fire quite a bit on the M1A because I've got to ram that bolt all the way home so I don't blow the round up in my face.
Right.
Because
Right.
that sucks.
Right. But whichever rifle you land on, obviously, you you want to train with what you plan to rely on, and learn the basic field repairs of that rifle. I think is very important. A lot of people probably don't completely tear down and rebuild their rifle and know what the wear parts are on that. And that's why I say buying like a rebuild kit is huge, because then when that one part finally does fail, you should know where to find that part. You should know how to replace that part, and you should make sure you have spares on hand. Because like an AR-15, dude, a complete lower rebuild kit, I want to say they're like $70, and it's every spring and pin and everything in that rifle.
Yep. I've been in competition and somehow got the charging handle snapped off of my
No,
AR.
weird.
It was really, really weird. So I had to finish out the competition without that charging handle extended tab because it just snapped off. I didn't have a spare of those, and now I've got two of them.
Interesting. Was it one of the extended charging handles, or was it just regular one?
It was extended both laterally and vertically. It's a speed thing, so that I can just hook it with my non-firing hand and drag it straight back in one smooth motion.
Okay.
But
Yep.
it's that's because it was a competition gun.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So it was serving a completely different purpose. It's different for the mission.
Exactly. Let's talk about kind of our top three SHTF rifle picks.
Okay. Yeah, we
And
we do this kind of with every gun episode. What's your top 3? But I'm okay with that. Yeah. Do you wanna start it off?
I can go first.
Okay.
I kind of want to be able to defend these too.
Sure, let's
Like,
go back and forth on
I'm
these. What's your first one?
going to start with an AR-15 in 5.56, built
Okay.
or bought.
Is this a direct impingement, or is it a gas piston gun?
I'm going to go with direct impingement. And the
Okay.
reason for that is because even though it runs dirtier, the parts are significantly easier to find. And I don't necessarily think it's worth having the extra recoil for a follow on shot that a gas piston system gives you. They are lighter, they are a little bit dirtier, but I'm going to go with the direct impingement almost every time. And then I recommend upgrading the trigger. A normal AR-15 trigger stock is between 8 and 15 pounds of trigger pull weight that has to be applied before it'll go off. Mine is a 2-stage trigger with a 5-ounce first stage and a 10-ounce break. So it's very quick. But it's modular, it's common. They are very adaptable and surprisingly durable. They're very easy to support having that type of rifle. So I'm going to say that my number one is AR-15. Plenty of ammo, plenty of mags, and probably something like a LPVO, low power variable optic, a 1 to 6 from Primary Arms, something to that effect. That's going to get you a really, really long way with an AR. So
Yeah.
what would you pick that one apart? Where we
No, dude, I'm right there with you. It's my number one too. It's the exact same, and I will tell you that um that one of the reasons I go with a direct impingement system that you didn't mention is you can buy, and I have a number of them. CMMG makes them a 22 long rifle conversion kit for your AR-15, and they work better with a direct impingement. And I forget exactly why. It's like something about the way it strikes the some kind of faceplate within the gas piston or something. I don't think they like them as much. But yeah, I'm right there with you that an AR-15 in 5.56 is probably kind of my number one because they're just parts are everywhere for them. But also, yeah, when we start talking about commonality, you can turn that into a 22 long rifle, semi-automatic for like $180.
yeah. Yeah. They are incredibly versatile. So that was your number one as well?
Yeah, that was mine too, right? Yeah, 100%. Probably the same rifle. Obviously, there's all kinds of we can have all kinds of conversations about optics and all kinds of accessories and all kinds of stuff like that. You got to have a good light on your rifle, and it's got to be able to be turned on and off from where you naturally like to rest your left hand if you are a right-handed shooter. I think that's very important. Um, I think obviously we could talk about optics all day long. I really like the um, like an EOTech type sight with a flip out extender, so you can switch that rifle from either a very short range CQB type rifle to a longer range, 500-yard gun with just flipping optic up. I really like doing that with mine. But yeah, that essentially is the same pick for me too.
Okay. So in that case, what's your number two?
So my number two, and this is my favorite rifle. This is probably the rifle that I carry with me. This is what you would call my truck gun, but it's actually on the back of my ATV almost all the time when I'm running around the property. And this is a Marlin model 1894 uh, lever action chambered in 357 Magnum, and it's just a very quality gun. If you've ever operated a lever action, there's some cheaper ones and they're cheaper. There's a lot of those Turkish guns out there. This just operates so smoothly and they look cool too. They've got like this beechwood kind of finish they're all very high, chrome, they're polished. Uh this particular one that it's their SBL series. It's got a ring sight in the back and a fiber optic up front. And then it comes with a factory Picatinny rail. And on that, I have a loopholed fixed power. It's actually meant kind of for this gun. It's a 2.5 power optic on that. But it's the rings that it sits just a little high on that riser, and so you can actually pick up the factory sight underneath the scope if you need to get on target really, really quick. But that 2.5 power, it provides you with a lot of situational awareness. It's a tiny gun. We're talking about like a 16.1-inch barrel. It's a very small rifle, and I think 357 has a lot of versatility because you can put 38 special in it, or you
Hmm.
can put 357. And I think you probably get one or two more rounds in there if you're going 38 special. But I just, that the gun feels like it would last forever. It's just very, very smooth. I think this is the rifle that Chris Pratt had in Jurassic Park. Obviously, his was like a 45-70 or something, but I think
Right. Yeah.
it's that exact same rifle, and I like it. And with that 2.5 power optic, this is very easily a 100-yard gun for me that I can shoot offhand, and it's a very comfortable firearm, and it's small. Like it just feels very good in your hands. Anyway, that's my number two, and I'm sure you've had some time behind one of these, but I just think it's a very quality rifle.
I have one. My wife got one for me for my birthday.
Really?
They are phenomenal. Mine's got the black and gray kind of steel coat stock.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're good
yeah.
looking guns and so smooth on the lever.
Very smooth, and, I would say probably the only manufacturer that does a better job with the lever action is Henry, but they're heavy. A Henry is very heavy. That big octagon barrel, it's just a very heavy. The action is fine, but they're heavy. This is not. This is a very versatile, lightweight gun. Dare I say, like a CQB, if there was such a thing in lever action, because it's just so easy to manage.
Yep. Yep.
So that would be my number two. If I could only have two guns, you're probably looking at them.
Well, my number two is a 22 long rifle. I'm gonna say it. 22 long rifle, semi-auto, Ruger 1022 takedown, specifically with a Magpul Hunter stock because it collapses in on itself. It's a self-contained unit, super easy to deploy, and the stock will hold an additional 3 magazines, so you don't have to worry about running out of ammo on just your first 10 shots. Um, they are quiet, they are efficient. It is invaluable long term, and I cannot tell you how many rabbits and squirrels I have picked off with this thing. They are stupidly accurate when it comes to getting game uh, from the ground because rabbits will run
Right.
at 50 yards. I can still hit a rabbit while it's moving. It's got just the perfect amount of lightweight, no recoil, super easy to pick up and uh, go drop a small game rabbit. If you're that hungry, that's definitely what I would go with is a 22. Specifically, I really like the Ruger 1022 takedown, and I love that Magpul Hunter stock that I've got on mine.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's a solid one. Any reason you wouldn't go for just the conversion kit for your AR?
I have one, um, and in my experience, they tend to be a little bit pickier with ammo.
Sure.
That's
Oh yeah, 100%.
specifically why.
Yeah, yeah. You have no problem shooting 100% lead ammo out of that Ruger 1022, right?
Correct.
I mean, it'll always cycle with it at least.
Yep, and
Yep.
CCI mini mags, they're still cheap, and anytime I go hunting, I just grab a box, 100 rounds. I'm not gonna shoot all of it, but I've probably put 60 or 70 rounds downrange while hunting before. Um, Reconfirm 0, go out, hit the bag limit for bunnies, then hit the bag limit for squirrels, and
Yeah.
then back to the truck it is. So, it's I really like 22 for a survival rifle.
100%. And it's funny that you say that, a 22 survival rifle, because my number three, which would be my last one, if there was only one gun I was ever going to have ever in the end of the world times, it would be I'm going to steal this from you. I think this was from our shotgun episode, although you kind of cheated because it's not just a shotgun, but the M6, which is a folding shotgun slash 22. It's a single shot shotgun with a single shot 22 over it. Originally, these were made by Springfield and they were in a 410. Now Chiappa makes them, and you can get them in a 12 gauge and a 22 long rifle. And these are just an amazingly versatile rifle. If you look up the Chiappa M6, you can get them in a bunch of different calibers, but within the 12 gauge, obviously 12 gauge is just it's just so universal. You're going to find those things everywhere. This one does have a removable choke tube, which is kind of interesting for just this break open. And if you look at these, you just got to look them up because they look so simple. And when you look at it, you're going to go, yeah, I'm not going to pay $800 for that. And I don't blame you. Like when you look at it, it's just this skeletonized, single shot, foldable kind of backpack rifle. But these were like the original aircrew survival rifles is where the original Springfield M6 came from. But a couple of things I like about it, it stores ammo in the stock, which is cool. They do completely fold in half. And some of the things that Chiappa added to them over the original Springfield is that it's got 3 Picatinny rails on it. So you can put all kinds of weird stuff on this. And it has a fiber optic front sight. I do like that. But also, I've talked about this before with the caliber inserts. So once you have a 12 gauge, especially a break open 12 gauge, you can shoot anything out of that with certain caliber inserts. And Chiappa actually makes them specifically for this. So you can buy a kit that has these rifled chamber inserts that go down the barrel of that 12 gauge, and you can shoot anything. You can shoot 45 ACP, you can shoot 9mm, and these are rifled. So they're insanely accurate and they're very long. I think you can get them in excess of 12 inches, maybe even 16 inches long. So you think about you're adding this very long, very accurate barrel and an infinite amount of calibers to this rifle. Now, the downside obviously is just simply the cost, and you're not going to shoot very fast. You got 2 rounds, and then you're pulling things out and putting more, ammo back into it. So you're not going to shoot it quickly, and very expensive when you start talking about these chamber inserts. But if you're saying, hey, you can have one rifle forever for the rest of your life in some kind of SHTF situation, it would be this, because I truly believe that rifle will outlast me, even if you're using it daily and just abusing the hell out of it.
I can definitely agree with that. And with a 16 or a 12-inch barrel insert, if you're running
Yeah,
something like 10mm out of that break
sure.
action, that's going to have a just ridiculous muzzle velocity. It's going to be incredibly fast. You're not going to have to lead your target at all, or you're going to overshoot. So,
Right. And, 12 gauge, very versatile, because when you start talking about 12 gauge, you can have, obviously this is your long rifle episode, but 12 gauge is very versatile. You can put all kinds of different rounds in it. And then you could get like a 410 insert. And again, very versatile round where there's all kinds of different rounds for that. And when we're talking about rifled chamber inserts, then yes, you could conceivably shoot that gun in excess of 100 or 200 yards. It would suck, but you could absolutely do it.
yeah, 100% you could. I'm going to go with my number 3 as a bolt action 308, specifically a Ruger American Gen 2, because they are magazine fed and they take AR-10 magazines. I have a Vortex scope on mine right now, Riton, Riton. They make some really good scopes and they have a lifetime warranty, no questions asked. You can run over it with your truck and they'll replace it. Riton is really good, but Vortex is also fantastic. The thing I really like about the Ruger American is how lightweight they are and how accurate they are for that weight. You do get a little bit more felt recoil, but it's totally worth it when you ring that gong at 1,000 just because you can. Um,
Sure.
and that's the one that I really like to run 180 grain rounds in it. My M1A, I run 165s and it's perfectly fine, but that longer throat length in the barrel, it likes the 180s and I can make them reach out and touch.
Yeah, what vortex scope are you running?
It is a 6 by 14 by 54, I believe.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
it's a pretty solid big scope. I've got to get extended rings to make it fit.
Yeah, they make some great stuff, and I think I think they get some shade thrown at them because they do make inexpensive stuff as well. You get people that are just very hardcore, whatever it is. It's Night Force, it's Loophole, it's Trigicon, because those companies only make great stuff, and they do. Yeah, no argument there. And I think Vortex gets some shade because there are optics that they make in China. And so people go, oh, well, they're just Chinese made. Well, yeah, I would argue that so is your cell phone and you use that every day. But also their big stuff, like their Razer HD stuff, it's not made in China and it's like really good high quality glass. They use like Japanese glass, which they're right up there with the Germans when it comes to optics. So yeah, I just bought and I have not sighted it in yet that they're whatever it's the biggest thing they make. It's that Razer HD Gen 3 uh on a, 50 something millimeter optic. It's massive. And I bought that for my 300 Win Mag and I haven't sighted in yet. I'm just looking forward to that. I just need a good clear day to do it.
And right on, they use, I believe it's Swarovski glass, which
Sure.
Swarovski is one of only 4 glazeries on the planet that has smooth enough machinery that they can manufacture materials for the Hubble and JWST and stuff like that for space optics. Swarovski, there's one in Japan, there's one in Korea, and there's one, I want to say, in Switzerland, but I can't remember. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
Right On
sure.
uses Swarovski glass, so it's solid stuff. I think the biggest takeaway from this whole episode is don't go buy everything that we've talked about. I mean,
Yeah,
if you've got that kind of mess around money, go for it. But
sure. Yeah, don't go buy everything. It's understand your environment and your skill level and your logistics, and then you can kind of decide what needs to go in that, I was going to say arsenal, but in that toolkit. You can decide what tools you need and you can outfit it from there. But yeah, I think it's clear you don't need to own 20 guns. I think if you know what your mission is going to be and what those mission subsets are going to be, you can get away with very few long rifles and very few calibers. You can do a lot with interchangeable calibers and that interoperability.
absolutely, train more than you accessorize. You know, stock ammo smarter than you stock opinions. uh, and I think that's about going to close this one out. Do you have anything else to add on, AC?
Uh, no, I'm excited for next week. We're gonna do something really fun and we're gonna bust some prepper myths. So I think that's gonna be a fun one. And there's certainly a further gun conversation to be had in a lot of those myths.
Absolutely, there is. I'm looking forward to it. So until then, remember that you are your own stakeholder, and we will see you then.